my family didn't just skip Grandma Beatrice's funeral. They reminded me who they really were. But what they didn't know was that Beatrice had already seen through all of them years ago. Only 3 people showed up to say goodbye to the woman who raised me. Me, my 8-year-old twins Jasper and Finn, and Mrs. Yamamoto from next door. Beatrice deserved better. She deserved her son and daughter to be there. She deserved her other grandchildren to care enough to fly in from their busy, important lives. But my brother Caleb was closing some tech deal in Silicon Valley, and my sister Bianca was at an influencer conference in Miami, building her brand. I handled everything alone. The arrangements, the flowers, the pastor who barely knew her but tried his best to make it meaningful. My credit cards took the hit because, as usual, I was the one who stepped up. Beatrice would have understood. She always said I had her heart, the part that couldn't leave people hanging. The boys were quiet during the service. They loved their great-grandmother, loved how she'd slip them extra cookies and teach them card games that were probably too advanced for their age. When we got home that evening, Finn asked if great-grandma was watching us from heaven. I told him she was. What I didn't tell him was that she'd been watching all of us for a lot longer than that. 3 days later, I was boxing up Beatrice's apartment when I found the notebook. Tucked behind her jewelry box, pages filled with her careful handwriting. But it wasn't recipes or memories like I expected. It was passwords, wallet addresses, and something called seed phrases. At the bottom of one page, she'd written, "For Vera's boys, the future they deserve." Her old laptop was still on the kitchen counter, the same one Caleb claimed he'd helped her set up years ago. The same one he never actually touched. I opened it, typed in the password from her notebook, and my world shifted. Bitcoin wallet. Created in 2011. Current value, $487,000. I sat there staring at the screen, trying to process what I was seeing. Beatrice, who I thought barely understood smartphones, had been quietly investing in cryptocurrency for over a decade. She'd bought in early, when Bitcoin was worth almost nothing, and she'd held on. For the grandchildren's future, according to her notes. For Jasper and Finn's education. I should have kept it to myself. Should have closed the laptop and figured out what to do quietly. But I was excited. Emotional. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would bring the family together around something positive for once. So I sent a message to our family group chat. Found something amazing while cleaning out Beatrice's place. She left the boys a Bitcoin inheritance. $487,000. She was planning their futures this whole time. The response was immediate. And everything changed. Caleb called within 10 minutes. Not to ask about the funeral he'd missed, not to check how I was holding up, but to demand details about the Bitcoin. How much exactly? Was I sure about the amount? Had I verified it with an expert? Bianca's response came in the form of a voice message that made my skin crawl. "Oh my God, Vera, this changes everything. We need to split this properly." Beatrice would have wanted all her grandchildren to benefit equally, right? My followers are always asking about investment tips. This is like such a blessing for all of us. All of us. Like she'd been there. Like she'd cried at the empty funeral or spent her own money on flowers. Then my parents chimed in. Victoria, my mother, sent a long text about family unity and making sure everyone got their fair share. Harrison, my father, called to remind me that inheritance law was complicated and I shouldn't make any decisions without consulting everyone. Everyone. The same people who couldn't be bothered to show up when it mattered. I tried to explain what Beatrice's note said. That this was specifically for educational purposes, for Jasper and Finn's future. But suddenly everyone became experts on what Beatrice really meant and what she would have wanted. Caleb threatened legal action, citing California inheritance law. Bianca started posting cryptic messages on social media about family betrayal and greed. My parents began calling extended family members, painting me as secretive and selfish. The manipulation escalated quickly. Caleb hired a lawyer and sent me papers threatening to challenge my custody of the boys. He claimed my financial instability made me an unfit mother, pointing to my credit card debt as evidence. The same debt I'd accumulated paying for Beatrice's funeral that he didn't attend. The irony wasn't lost on me. He was threatening to take my children to get access to money that Beatrice had left specifically for their education. Family dinners became ambushes. Every conversation circled back to the Bitcoin. Victoria would sigh dramatically and mention how Beatrice always worried about fairness among her grandchildren. Harrison would bring up old family stories, twisted to suggest that Beatrice felt guilty about favoritism. The boys started noticing. Jasper asked why Uncle Caleb seemed angry all the time. Finn wondered why Aunt Bianca only visited when she wanted to talk to Mommy about grown-up money stuff. I felt isolated in a way I hadn't since my divorce. Every response was calculated. Every family interaction became a chess game I didn't want to play. They stopped asking about my job, about the boys' school, about anything that wasn't related to when I'd do the right thing and share Beatrice's gift. 3 weeks after the funeral, I discovered they'd been meeting behind my back. Caleb and Bianca had consulted with a cryptocurrency expert, trying to figure out how to force a sale of the assets. Bianca had already bought a new Tesla on credit, banking on her future inheritance. Caleb was preparing detailed custody papers, documenting every financial misstep I'd made over the past year. That's when Harrison made his play. He showed up at my apartment with flowers and that smile he used when he needed something big. Victoria was sick, he said. The treatments were expensive. Could I loan them $50,000 from the inheritance? Just temporarily, until they figured out their insurance situation. I almost believed him. That's how good he was, how much practice he'd had over the years at making his needs sound like emergencies that only I could solve. But something made me hesitate, made me ask questions. The truth came out slowly. Victoria wasn't sick. They wanted to remodel their kitchen. The same kitchen where Beatrice had taught me to bake, where she'd told me stories about her own grandmother's strength. They wanted to tear it all down and rebuild it with my money. When I said I needed time to think, Harrison's mask slipped. He told me Beatrice would be ashamed of my selfishness. Said family was supposed to take care of each other. Said I was keeping secrets and playing favorites just like she had. That night, I went back to Beatrice's apartment one more time. I was looking for answers, for some sign of what she really intended. That's when I found her journal, hidden in the back of her bedroom closet. Page after page of observations about her family. About Caleb's growing arrogance, his tendency to take credit for other people's work. About Bianca's hollow pursuit of social media fame, her willingness to exploit family moments for content. About my parents' pattern of enabling the wrong behaviors while taking the reliable children for granted. And about me. How I'd stayed kind despite everything. How I'd never asked for help but always provided it. How she worried I'd give too much of myself to people who'd never give anything back. The final entry was dated 2 weeks before she died. The Bitcoin isn't about money. It's about showing Vera that she deserves to choose herself for once. I pray she's strong enough to disappoint them. I sat on her bedroom floor crying, not from sadness, but from relief. She'd seen it all. She'd planned this. It wasn't an accident or an oversight. It was a test. The next morning, I met with a lawyer who specialized in digital assets. The Bitcoin had been legally transferred to a wallet in my name 6 months before Beatrice died. There was no inheritance dispute because there was no inheritance. It was a gift freely given, completely legal. Caleb's custody threat was baseless. I was an exemplary mother with steady employment and no criminal record. His own lawyer had probably told him the same thing. Everything they'd done, every threat and manipulation, had been built on lies and legal ignorance. I could have handled it quietly, taken the money, moved away, started fresh somewhere they couldn't find us. But that wasn't what Beatrice would have wanted. She'd raised me to face hard truths, not run from them. I sent one message to the family group chat. No explanation, no argument. Just photos of the relevant pages from Beatrice's journal. Her real thoughts about each of them. Her explicit intention for the money. Her pride in my character and her disappointment in theirs. The silence lasted exactly 12 minutes. Then the group chat exploded. Caleb called me unstable, threatened to release private information about my divorce. Bianca accused me of forging the journal entries, said I was destroying the family for money. My parents demanded I come over immediately to discuss this like adults. I turned off my phone and took the boys to the park. We fed ducks and played on the swings while my family had their meltdown without me. For the first time in months, I felt peaceful. The consequences unfolded over the following weeks. Caleb's business partners got copies of the legal documents he'd filed, saw the character he'd revealed in his pursuit of money that wasn't his. Some of them started questioning his ethics, his judgment, his fitness to handle their investments. Bianca's followers noticed the inconsistency between her family values brand and her public fight over inheritance money. Comment sections filled with questions about her authenticity. Sponsors started pulling out of deals. Victoria and Harrison's friends learned about their attempted manipulation through the gossip network they'd used to spread rumors about me. The same people they'd tried to turn against me were now seeing their true colors. I didn't have to destroy them. They destroyed themselves. The family went quiet for months. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits. My parents sent passive-aggressive holiday cards that I didn't respond to. Harrison made one attempt at reconciliation, showing up at my work with coffee and apologies that felt more like negotiation tactics than genuine remorse. I politely declined his invitation to work things out. There wasn't anything to work out. They'd shown me who they were when they thought money was involved. I believed them. But not everyone in the family was broken. My cousin Dashiell, Beatrice's great-nephew, reached out 3 months after everything went down. He'd heard pieces of the story through family gossip and wanted me to know he wasn't surprised. Dash had been the black sheep for years, not because he'd done anything wrong, but because he'd chosen teaching over tech, service over status. He understood what it felt like to be measured by the wrong metrics, to be dismissed by people who equated worth with wealth. He became the boys' honorary uncle, the family member who showed up for school plays and birthday parties, who taught them how to fish and helped with homework. He reminded me that blood doesn't make family, character does. I used Beatrice's gift exactly as she'd intended. College funds for Jasper and Finn, managed by a financial advisor who understood long-term planning. A scholarship in Beatrice's name for kids from broken families who needed educational support. Enough to pay off my debts and buy a modest house with a backyard where the boys could grow up safely. I kept enough for emergencies and saved the rest. Not because I was greedy, but because I'd learned the difference between having enough and needing to prove I had enough. 1 year after Beatrice's funeral, Mrs. Yamamoto knocked on my door with a letter she'd found while cleaning out her own papers. It was from Beatrice, written a month before she died, asking Mrs. Yamamoto to deliver it to me exactly 1 year later. My dear Vera, it began. If you're reading this, it means you made the right choice. The money was never the inheritance I was most proud to leave you. The real inheritance was your strength, your kindness, your ability to choose love over convenience and character over comfort. I watched you for 35 years, and I never once saw you compromise who you were for what someone else wanted you to be. That's the gift I hope you pass on to Jasper and Finn. The letter continued. Some people will try to make you feel guilty for having boundaries, for choosing yourself, for refusing to carry their burdens. Don't let them. The people who truly love you will never ask you to shrink so they can feel bigger. She ended with, the money will run out someday, but the kind of person you choose to be lasts forever. I'm proud of who you chose to be when it mattered most. I sat in my kitchen reading those words, Jasper and Finn doing homework at the table we'd bought with Beatrice's gift. In the house that was finally ours. Dash was coming over for dinner, bringing his own kids for a weekend playdate that had become tradition. This was family. This was what Beatrice had really left me. Not the Bitcoin, but the knowledge that I deserved better than what I'd been accepting. The courage to choose peace over performance, love over loyalty, truth over tradition. My parents still send Christmas cards. Caleb still tries to connect on LinkedIn occasionally. Bianca posted a vague apology on her social media last spring, something about family healing and personal growth that felt more like brand management than genuine remorse. I don't respond anymore. Not because I'm angry, but because I'm done. There's a difference between slamming a door and quietly locking it. What I did wasn't revenge. It was acceptance. They showed me who they were when they thought money was involved. And I finally believed them. The real inheritance Beatrice left me wasn't cryptocurrency. It was permission to stop trying to earn love from people who were never willing to give it freely. It was the understanding that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people face the consequences of their own choices.
And it was peace.
The quiet, still kind of peace that comes from knowing you chose correctly when everything was on the line. That you protected what mattered most. That you didn't compromise who you were for what other people wanted you to be. Jasper asked me recently if I miss them. The grandparents and uncle and aunt who used to be part of our lives. I told him the truth. I missed the idea of them, but not the reality of who they actually were. He thought about that for a moment, then nodded like it made perfect sense. Like when you think you want ice cream for breakfast, but you know it would make you sick? Exactly like that, I told him. Sometimes wanting something and it being good for you are two different things. Beatrice would have loved that answer. She would have been proud to know her great-grandsons were learning wisdom that took me 35 years to understand. The inheritance was never about the money. It was about learning to choose myself when it mattered most. And I finally did.